Well, hello everyone, Scott here, and in this week's lesson we're going to be covering part 2 in our little mini-series on the 4 legal pitfalls where you can find yourself in hot water in self-storage. So, what we covered last week was the wrongful sale and disposal lawsuits that could be brought against you as a self-storage facility owner and how to protect yourself against that. Today we're going to be talking about breach of contract, and next week we're going to go over employment law and then also class action lawsuits, and once again we're going to be mostly focusing on how to avoid each and every one of those. So, breach of contract. Well, what does that mean? What can happen? Well, these are basically claims that say that you did not offer the services or provide the type of protection, and that is very, very key here in self-storage, that the contract promised. Typically charged after any break-ins, fires, criminal activity, and after the sale. In other words, wrongful sale, as we talked about before. So here's how you keep yourself out of hot water, and that's by not using terms such as maximum security storage and surveillance and monitoring. If you promote your facility as having maximum storage and secure and using that as part of your brand or your name or a tagline, you open yourselves up to that. Once again, this is a litigious society that we live in. I don't have to convey that information to you. We all know that all you have to do is watch the nightly news to determine that. But if there is a fire, a break-in, any type of criminal activity, and you stated in your brand or your tagline that it's safe and secure, well, that's a breach of contract, essentially. That's the way the courts determine that, and so I recommend staying away from that, and so do our attorneys as well. Also, I think some very misused, I know some very misused terms in our industry are surveillance, 24-hour video surveillance, and monitoring. There's a difference there, and depending upon how you interpret this, and also from a legal standpoint, monitoring means that somebody is watching at all times. Remember the old movies where somebody is actually sitting in a monitor, like in an office building? That means monitoring. Somebody's monitoring your facility. And surveillance, well, that means also, the best example is in the movies when somebody's in a van across the street and they're listening and watching as to what's going on in some apartment or some would-be criminal's residence. If you don't have that, you can't use those terms. Furthermore, I've visited self-storage facilities that were looking to purchase where people had signs up all over the place. The owner had signs up all over the place that said video surveillance and monitoring in 24 hours and violators prosecuted, and they had cameras all over this facility, only to find out after having a conversation with them that the cameras were plastic and they were glued on the side of the building, and he didn't have any security at all whatsoever in the way of any surveillance, monitoring, let alone any cameras that were going anywhere recording any type of information. So be cautious of that as well. Certainly that's not a practice that you should use, and also be aware of that as you're looking at facilities to purchase as well. Okay, here's some of the things that we want to include in our lease to make sure that, that you don't put yourselves in a place where you could be accused of breach of contract. And there's by not creating a bailment. The beauty of self-storage is that we don't take responsibility, or we don't take the keys to a unit. It is self-storage. They have sole access to their unit. We do not take care, custody, or control of goods. That is the actual statement that describes that. That needs to be included in your lease. Disclaiming security systems. What do you have? What don't you have? Making sure you list exactly what you have in place at that facility. A mold disclaimer. Can't guarantee that it's not going to happen. You know, we can help them prevent it by selling them the mold canisters, but we don't make any claims that that's not going to happen, especially in human environments, which is pretty much anywhere in this country that you can be exposed and experience some type of a humid environment that may cause some mold, so we certainly don't want that. Define climate control. You know what? That is also a term that is used very loosely. And again, our attorney and most of the attorneys that are adept at self-storage will tell you not even to use the term climate, because we can't control climate. And I believe there was a case, don't quote me on this, where a facility owner was held liable for the damage of a person's good for saying that they can control the climate, which meant the humidity as well. And there were some mold issues or water damage. And at the end of the day, you can't control the climate. Only Mother Nature or God can control the climate. And so the court found that the owner of the facility was negligent, and they had to pay for the damaged goods, because we can only control the temperature. We can't control the climate. A mediation clause. We certainly want to guard yourself by not having to incur a lot of legal fees, having to defend yourself in the case of a breach of contract. And so the first offense is a mediation clause, which means that if anything, if an issue arises, that you agree by signing this contract, this rental agreement, this lease agreement, that you are going to go to mediation first, and that you're not just going to go run down to your attorney's office and go file a suit against the owner of the facility. That is verbiage to protect you from what a potential tenant may do. And then also the buzzword is reliance, and just relying on the terms that are in the contract. We can rely on things, but they're not always true, and so that is the term that you have to utilize. But once again, making sure all of these are reviewed, these terms and your agreement for your self-storage facility is reviewed by an attorney in your state who is very adept at self-storage. There are also national attorneys that can help you out with this as well. Jeffrey Greenberger is one of them. Caslow, there's a number of them. If you go to the Self-Storage Association, inside self-storage, you'll see a number of the attorneys listed that know the ins and outs of self-storage law, and they know it at the state level as well. So here is a sample security disclaimer, since this seems to be the area that you can open yourself up to so easily and readily in self-storage. And that is, an operator employs certain security type measures for the protection of the facility only. You list the security features that you have, and that the occupant acknowledges that these measures are for the protection of the facility as a whole and not the individual premises. That these systems may not operate properly in the event of a mechanical, electrical, or software failure. So, we'll protect the facility as a whole. We as owners, we're not responsible for what happens inside the unit because we haven't created a bailment. We can't go in there and check on things. We're not liable for that. That's what you have renter's insurance for, and in the event that something should happen, we're not liable for it because we can only control the outside. Also, we do take reasonable efforts to protect you while you're on site and in the grounds. However, some things can happen. If they do, then we're going to go to mediation and we'll discuss it in mediation. Okay, so make sure that you get with your attorney once again to review your contracts to make sure that they don't have some of those items we discussed and they do have statements such as this. So, for more free information, once again, head on over to selfstorageinvesting.com for other ways to not only protect yourself in self-storage, but also how to go out and grow your self-storage business. And tune in next week for part 3 of our 4-part mini-series on how to keep yourself safe in self-storage and avoid those legal pitfalls. This has been Scott Meyers. Have a fantastic day.